Good evening, trustees, committee members, and staff. Welcome to Special Education Advisory Committee meeting at the Peel District School Board. This meeting is now being live streamed and recorded and will be posted on the PDSB website for future viewing. I am Claudice Cucato, the Superintendent of Special Education and Social Emotional Learning. As per the Education Act, I am acting as a designate of the Director of Education and will preside over the meeting until there is a chair and vice chair elected. I will now call this meeting to order. I would like to ask our immediate team to now play the land acknowledgement.
The land upon which we work, live, and sustain ourselves is the ancestral and treaty lands of the Michizagig Anishinaabe, also known today as the Mississaugas of the Credit, the rightful caretakers and title holders of this land. We also recognize the rich pre-contact history and relationships which include the Anishinaabe and the Ongwe-Hongwe.
Since European contact, this land continues to be home to Indigenous and non-Indigenous peoples. As responsible community members, we value the diversity, dignity, and worth of all people.
Colonialism displaced and dispossessed Indigenous peoples of their ancestral land
and continues to deny their basic human rights, dignities, and freedoms.
We are committed to learning true history to reconcile, make reparations, and fulfill our treaty obligations to the original peoples and our collective responsibilities to the lands, water, animals, and each other for future generations.
Thank you. There are no changes to the agenda. Can I please have a motion to approve the agenda? Thank you, Trustee Elves, and second, Trustee Clark. Thank you. The South Ghana was expected to be present today, but was unable to attend. They have shared that they will be present at the next meeting and will provide a letter to the SEAC committee to explain their absences. At that time, we will have a motion for SEAC to authorize their absences at the next meeting. I'd like to ask now if there are any declarations of conflict of interest. I see none. The next order of business is the election of the chair and vice chair of the Special Education Advisory Committee. These elections are for a one-year term. We will now receive nominations for the position of committee chair. Please raise your hand if you wish to put forward a nomination. Please note that a committee member may nominate themselves. Thank you, Kevin.
I'd like to nominate Shelley Foster for chair.
Okay. Shelley Foster. I have received a nomination for Shelley Foster as chair. Are there any members who wish to serve as chair of the committee? Okay. I have a motion from Kevin to therefore appoint Shelley Foster as the chair. Oh, I need a seconder. Sorry, can I have the second for that nomination? Trustee Clark, thank you. Okay. I have a motion from member Kevin and seconded by Trustee Clark to appoint member Shelley Foster as the chair of the Special Education Advisory Committee. So, Shelley Foster, do you accept the nomination?
Sir. Yes, I accept the nomination.
May I now have a motion that nominations be closed? Trustee Elves and seconded by Trustee Benjamin. Thank you. This motion requires a mover and a seconder. It also requires a show of hands to carry the motion. Can I have a show of hands to carry the motion as Shelley Foster as the chair? Seeing a 100% consensus. There was only one nomination for chair of the Special Education Advisory Committee. Member Shelley Foster is acclaimed in the position. Congratulations, Shelley. Happy to have you. We are now going to move on to vice chair. Want me to do it? Okay. The next item is to elect a committee vice chair. The process for electing the committee vice chair is the same as the process for electing the chair. Would someone like to share a nomination for the position of vice chair? Yes. Thank you, Jennifer.
Let's do make Mary Wright for vice chair.
Thank you. Please note that Jennifer Knight has nominated Mary Wright. Do we have a seconder for that? Thank you. Barbara Sear has seconded. Is there anybody else who would like to act in the position of vice chair? Thank you. Mary, would you like to accept the position as vice chair of the SEAC committee?
Yes, I would.
Okay. I'm just go back. Pardon? Oh, yes, I'd like to officially close the nominations for the election of vice chair and congratulate Mary Wright as the selection of the vice chair. I just need a mover and a seconder to approve the motion. Thank you. Sorry, you have your name tag there.
Dorothy King.
Oh, thank you, thank you. So, firsted by Dorothy and a seconder, trustee Elves, and a show of hands for the nomination. Consensus. Congratulations, Mary. I will now move the meeting over to our re-elected chair, Shelley Foster. Thank you.
I appreciate everybody's support. Okay. Excuse me. I figure out where we are. Which is the, so we're going to move on to the approval of the minutes, which is 6.1, the Special Education Advisory Committee meeting minutes for November 28th, 2023. And does anybody have any comments, questions, or concerns with regards to these minutes? Yes? Sure, if you want to bring it.
Do have concern, question. So through you, Chair, at the last meeting, I brought forth a motion. And in looking at the minutes, we're talking about the minutes for this meeting.
Yes.
Yeah. It was reworded. I'm a little confused as to why that has happened. Because we apparently at the last meeting, we did not move to receive the motion. We did not discuss the motion that I put forth. And then I'm not sure who took it upon themselves to rewrite this motion. Yeah, so I'm a little concerned about that. And if somebody could explain why that is happening.
Yes, through you, Chair, we are moving for the notice of motion regarding pathway outcomes for students with special education at today's meeting. To have a formal, we had decided the last meeting to move it to the motion to this meeting for Chair Foster to be able to take the vote and approve the motion. If you have some suggestions as to how we can reword that we would have received that.
Well, the wording that I put in my motion is what I wanted in the motion. I'm not sure why it's being changed. It doesn't address what I asked for them. Because it says in here, Vice Chair Mary Wright submitted the following notice of motion. That's not what I said.
Mayor, do you have a copy of your original motion?
It's in there further down in the agenda, but it states that this is what I submitted on whatever, number 11.
So through you, chairs, apparently your exact statement is written in the appendix.
Understood, but it leads the reader to believe that that is written here, stating that this is what the following motion of notice of motion, that's what it says. The following notice of motion was submitted by Mary Wright.
Sure, through
And
you, Chair.
the wording, that's not what I said.
Okay, through you, Chair, I'd like to ask our counsel to Catherine Locker to respond. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you for the question and the opportunity to clarify and through you, Madam Chair. It was just reformatted to the format of a notice of an actual motion. But we wanted to make sure that we preserved what it is that you were saying. So that's why it was attached as an appendix. So your exact words are captured and it's just been formatted into a motion.
Sorry, I would like to argue that my exact words are not captured. Because I specifically asked you about, or I asked the committee about students with intellectual disabilities. That is not written out there in the motion that claims I put forth. The words intellectual disabilities is not in there anywhere. And I'm actually kind of curious as to why that has been taken out.
Thank you for that and happy to work with you to actually include that in the notice of motion. If we've missed something, I do apologize. And if you would like to point out where you would want that added into, absolutely. The notice is given at one meeting, it's discussed at the next meeting, so this is a great opportunity. When we get on the agenda, you can correct the notice of motion.
Is that typical that they just rewrite somebody's motion like that without?
It is very typical to format it into the format of a motion. That's correct. Yes.
Okay.
Without consulting the person who submitted the motion?
Typically, we get consulted before the motion. The notice of motion is submitted.
So we're just looking for the proper procedure to do it so that this doesn't happen again and that somebody isn't upset.
Yeah, I apologize for any upset, absolutely. Motions, what was provided is more of a statement than a motion, so we categorize it into an emotion. We just formatted it into a motion.
Oh,
Okay.
there is a paragraph there that says, I hereby raise the motion that. So that portion there should have been taken word for word and put into my motion. None of the specifics of what I said.
Okay.
I hereby raise the motion was included in what was reworded. Which kind of leads me to believe that it's been reworded so you can provide whatever you wish to provide at this meeting and not quite answer my question.
So really not the intentions, my apologies.
Yeah, because, sorry, the month before, we had discussed it and it was requested that we go back and then bring the motion at the last meeting. There was no clarification to say, write it in that particular format that it was reformatted in. That could have been part of the instruction at the October meeting, right? As opposed to somebody taking it back, removing the words that I put in, inserting something else in order to bring back a response that the board chooses to respond with instead of answering my question. So it needs to be reworded and the motion that I put forward, I would like answered. Thank you.
Sorry, Madam Chair, I was going to ask just for a point of order, just saying, but I think, asked and answered, I think we'll be able to work on that today while it's on the table.
I agree.
And I also just wanted to color in a bit. So I had submitted a motion in the committee a couple of times, so just for context, I once articulated, actually, Superintendent Paul DeSilva was there for my motion. What I articulated was a little bit tough to capture, and after it was reformatted, and there was an opportunity for me to work with Council Lock here to get the legalese, as I like to call it, kind of reformatted. But I just wanted to say, I think that in this conversation today, when we get through the agenda, there will be a deep appropriate time for us to just kind of make sure things are included the way we need.
And I was just about to say that we will get a chance to fully discuss this and to figure out how this, how to go about submitting a proper motion, because it's important that, that words and intent be captured fully. All right, with that in mind, Mary, can you move for approval of the agenda?
Yes.
And within a second?
Yes.
Sorry, approval of the minutes, sir. That's what I meant.
Yes.
Obviously, I have to take the other 10 milligrams before I do this. Okay. All right. So then, do we have any delegations? Any questions from the public? Nothing. We're going to move on to the superintendent's report, number 8.1.
Thank you, and through you, Madam Chair. Good evening, and thank you for being here with us once again. I'm pleased to present a very brief report on our ongoing efforts to enhance the equity of access, experience, and outcomes for students with disability in collaboration with SEAC and members of the PDSB community. Our assessment of the current special education landscape has revealed both achievements and challenges. While progress has been made, disparities in access to educational resources and variations in the quality of teaching and support and differences in inclusive classroom practices persist. These findings underscore the critical need for continuous improvement. Our collaborative efforts with the community have proven instrumental in gaining diverse perspectives. Engaging with SEAC, parents, educators, and local stakeholders has provided valuable insights into the unique challenges faced by students with disabilities. We remain committed to fostering these partnerships to drive meaningful change. The concept of ongoing program interrogation has been central to our renewed strategy. Often that comes with advocacy from many of you in this room. Regular assessments, data collection, connection to the ministry, jurisdictional scans of other boards, and feedback loops have allowed us to start to identify many areas for improvement. This iterative process ensures that our initiatives are responsive to the evolving needs of our students and their families. We've identified 4 key areas for interrogation improvement: ensuring equitable access to educational resources, enhancing the quality of teaching and support, which has been raised by many of you, implementing inclusive classroom practices and access to technology, and strengthening parent and community partnership. Our commitment to making data-driven decisions remains unwavering, as this data serves as a compass guiding our efforts to enable us to track progress of students over time. We acknowledge that the challenges arise and that progress does not happen immediately. And despite that, we are committed to addressing the disparities transparently. We recognize that true equity requires collective action from all of us. We extend an open invitation, as always, to the continued ongoing support from SEAC and your insights and expertise to inform initiatives from your collective groups really do inspire us. As we move forward in the new year, I'll be sharing with you new initiatives and strategies aimed at furthering equity in special education. And our commitment to special education is not just a promise, but it is a guiding principle that has been embedded into one of our 3 strategic directions. I want to really express my gratitude for the advocacy of this group, many of you who I connect with at these meetings and outside these meetings. And just share that we have a strong commitment to improving access to programs. Thank you. Well, happy for any questions.
Sorry, Kevin, did you have a question?
I did, Barb. You
I think we'll start here and we'll go around. Okay.
All right. My question is on, do we have a little more detail on that in terms of objectives, indicators, metrics? Because it sounds awesome, but where's the piece of this?
Yeah, so we are, as a group, looking at interrogating some programs, and as I shared, some people in this room have really highlighted some of the concerns that they've had. So right now, we have targeted 3 to 4 programs that we're going to be looking at. I will be bringing back our critical pathway that will include metrics, collaboration with SEAC, and again, how we're consulting outside of the board with the ministry and other boards to understand how those services will be provided. And I'm sorry you missed last meeting because we did present a very wholesome presentation on UDL, but I hope you had access to the slide deck.
I haven't seen it.
Oh, okay. We're happy to share that with you guys. Thanks.
I think Bart?
So this is specific to students with learning disabilities? No, any students with exceptionalities or any students that are accessing the programs within the SESEL department?
Okay, because you mentioned students with disabilities.
So we are seeing a greater kind of disparities with those students specifically in the equity of access and achievement. So we will be focusing on some, not all programs. We can't really look at all programs in 1 year, but we really want to look at where the greatest disparities are happening for students with disabilities, especially those with intersectional identities.
Okay, thank you.
Ray, sorry, Ray. I will get it after a couple of times.
All right. So a quick observation, I mean, as the board works to develop the next year's plan and further, something that I've been noticing in the schools in the neighborhood and the, slightly wider area is that in the ASD classrooms, there is a lot more kids who are being assigned those classrooms to IPRC who have very severe physical needs, for the lack of a better word. More of like say quadriplegia or similar, in that genre sort of. Okay. Given the year resourcing being what it is, even if there is sufficient resourcing, a lot of the kids who have similar issues, who may or may not actually have autism or similar neurodiversity, diagnosis, they are not in school part full time. So there is a schedule to be managed in and out during the week. And of course, their needs, unfortunately, can sometimes be very, intense for the years to manage. And that seems to be having an effect of the learning experience of the rest of the kids in the class, where there is, unfortunately, let's say, 2 or 3 such kids who are assigned through IPRC process. It seems to be happening more in the highly, in the neighborhoods where population has increased a lot in recent times, and particularly also in middle school more than any other that I've noticed. So that's something that probably to keep in mind as the plans is being done for the next year or so.
May I ask for you, Chair? Through you, Chair, may I ask a question of clarification so I'm understanding what Ray is saying? Thank you. So are you indicating that in a congregated or contained ASD classroom, that students are being placed into the classroom that have also physical needs? I'm just trying to understand the question.
So when I say physical needs, I mean very severe physical needs who are mostly, let's say, quadriplegic or paraplegic or similar conditions. Obviously, I would not know the exact diagnosis for all sort of reasons. But from teachers as well as I see in the schools that I kind of, been to through for various reasons, there seems to be that happening. And those kids they're not there in the school all day, all the week. So they have a schedule of be there for 3 days a week for 3 hours. Okay. In the ASD classroom, where a change of routine and commotion is highly disturbing to most of the kids in that classroom, just because one of the things, the EAs are having a very hard time managing such, kids in the class. For no part of the kids, obviously, but then their needs are such that ASD classrooms are not probably best designated for managing such, assignment to that room. But that seems to be happening a lot more.
Yeah, so most of our congregated classes really do have criteria for entrance that is clearly laid out through the IPRC. So maybe after we can touch base about what classroom specifically you have concerns with, because there is placement criteria that's clearly laid out through the IPRC process. So I'd be interested in hearing what classes you feel are being impacted by that and happy to look into that detail. As far as students coming in and out of programs, we have something called a modified day, which I know SEAC was presented to SEAC, and it was a very comprehensive look at making sure that we weren't using modified day as a form of exclusion or of students. So it is a very critical process where we look at partnership with family, that it's done with family, and usually when students are accessing external care. So for example, they may be going to ABA or speech therapy. So then we allow for a modified day process to be filled, but we are really pushing back as a board to make sure we have full inclusion for full days for all of our students and that we're not using it as a means. So if the family has external supports that is done by a care provider, we do allow for the exit and entry, but they are still contained in that class cap, which is regulated through Learning for All by the ministry. So, but I can look specifically at the classes, and I thank you for that feedback.
Yeah, so just for my understanding, so what would be a typical, let's say, placement for a kid who you probably cannot assess for autism or let's say any other similar neurodiversity because the kid is, let's say, has paraplegic or similar such issues, where
so we would hope for, depending on the level of need again, and the desires of the family, for having students in the mainstream program as much as possible, unless there's a program that's designed to meet their both physical and more so achievement and academic needs. So there's a lot of criteria that would depend on that placement. But again, if there's a specific class that you're concerned about, I'm happy to look at. If it's an ASD or an SDR class, we have different levels of classes that we provide. So I'm happy to look into that with you.
And I'm going to suggest to the new members also that if you have a parent that approaches you or you have an issue come up that is specific, that it's perfectly okay for you to phone up Claudine and ask a question about that specific issue. And maybe that's a better place to bring that information forth. And then if you feel like you haven't gotten the right answer, or then you can bring it to SEAC. But usually, I find that usually staff is I'm using usually, but staff is receptive to questions, especially when it comes to specific classes or specific instances. So, and you will get your answer.
Yeah, I mean, this was not a specific person or specific classroom. I've noticed this in a number of schools actually, as I said, in the fast growing neighborhoods, so to say. So I just wanted to understand the placement policy.
So maybe you should have a presentation of
The
exceptionalities.
through you, Chair, yeah, we were happy to bring back a presentation on what we're moving towards congregated classes or that language, but congregated classes and what some of the selection criteria for those classes would be. Yeah, put that on the, would you like to put that on the action motion? What?
I think so, yes.
Okay.
Yeah,
Thank you.
Information. Yes, Jess.
Superintendent Sukali, you mentioned that there'd be 3 or 4 areas that you would then have this interrogation improvement on.
Mm-hmm.
Would those 3 or 4 areas be intersectionality? Would you be then reaching out to the committee members that represent that area to then have a voice in your policy?
Absolutely will. Absolutely will be doing that, because I think it is critical to understand both from a community perspective and a parent perspective, which many of you are, to make sure that where we think we need to go is really influenced by and as in your positions, you have the privilege of talking to many families with similar backgrounds. So we're happy to include you. Absolutely.
Yes, Jennifer.
I apologize, I haven't been here for a few months, so I may have missed something, but you talked a little bit about how you decided on these 3 or 4 programs. Can you elaborate on that a little bit? Like you talked about what data did you use exactly to figure out what the 3 or 4 areas were?
Sure, thank you. So often we have meetings with our special education resource teachers, itinerant teachers, and very much guided by input from this community. And then we start to talk to those people who have basically on the ground in school data about how students are progressing or not meeting expectations based on the programming. And then I have done a number of school-based visits to further interrogate with some of my superintendent colleagues and itinerants to look at the programs that are running themselves. Because I always feel like if I'm going to be making decisions or along with the committee, that I need to be in buildings and seeing those programs themselves. So it is based on feedback from SEAC that we have heard. It is based on understanding that the ministry review and the disparities of outcomes for our Black and Indigenous students is still something we need to really focus on. It's based on feedback from principals who are asking for program support, and special education resource and itinerant resource teachers sharing feedback with us about when they're going to student review meetings, when they don't see the progress across the programs that they should see.
Is there a way of capturing actual data around this, or is it more just kind of the feel of the principal and the feel of the instruction? Like,
so it is, because we're not looking at metrics of achievement or anything like that. We're looking at kind of program delivery model. We're looking at strong curriculum rigor, looking at kind of life skills or alternative expectations and things like that in programs like that.
I guess I'm just curious that how do you know you've got the top 3 or 4 challenges? How do you know you're working on the right 3 or 4 challenges to your programs?
That's a great question. Thank you, Jennifer, because we've talked about all of our programs and really looked at kind of where we've seen continued success or where we think we need some revision to make sure that the kids have a fulsome kind of educational rigor across all the subject areas. So we've talked about all of our programs. As a part of our review, because we know that a lot of our programs, we're actually talking now for next year because staffing numbers start coming up. So we really started talking early around our program delivery, what's been successful, what are we seeing, how many people are waiting for placement. So we have numbers according to that, like placement numbers and things like that. So we're looking at it now because we did a program analysis for based on numbers that are pending for next year.
Okay, Kevin?
Last Friday, the federal government published the Canadian Survey on Disability results, which some anyway, showed a 4% increase in the self-disclosed persons with disabilities here in Ontario alone. So going from 24 to 28%, that's going to be reflected across the board. So is that part of your planning? Because there will be, and there is an increase.
Yes, and through you, Chair, we have acknowledged that we do have an increase. We have on SIS data, which I'm going to answer Barb's question as an action motion log that came up from last meeting. So I will answer that later. So we do have the ability to take statistical information about the number of students with special education needs that we're serving. And then we have an ability to break that down by exceptionality. And so we do have that data that will be coming to SEAC soon.
Are you guys going to be sharing the 4 groups that you picked with us when you prioritize?
Yes, as soon as we make sure that we pick the right 4. We're still in meetings. We're having a full day committee meeting on Monday to make sure that we've really deeply analyzed, as you've said, and looked at all programs. And it doesn't mean that we're not continually working on improvement. It just means that these are the ones that we think that we need to look at now.
Yes, Dorothy.
And so what is your timeline to report back to us once you've captured your data? What's your timeline to report back to us what the end result is?
So end results will take time because we know that when we're doing an analysis, we have to do so really critically and thoughtfully and inclusively. I'm happy to report back the programs we're thinking about making modifications to for your feedback at the next meeting. Again, that would be this process starting at the end of the process. Thank you.
Anybody else?
I was just going to say, so is the goal that then the entire assessment and policy or process review would be complete this year for implementation next school year?
Through you, Chair, that would be our hope. But again, depending on kind of where we get in connection to ministry, what kind of feedback we get. Often the ministry will send out policy PPMs, policy and program memorandums that kind of shift our focus a little bit. But yes, the intention would be to strongly commit to improvement for implementation for September.
Jennifer, you have another question?
The programs that you're thinking about, have they been discussed at SEAC?
Not openly discussed at SEAC, but it, 3 of the 4 programs we're looking at are ones that have been raised here.
I'm just curious as to why we're waiting until you've decided to let us in on what the potential ones are, sort of.
Just because I want to make sure that I've accessed the kind of feedback of my team. It doesn't mean that I'm coming here without your input. If there's a direction that you think that, you know, we're looking at and that you think I'm missing, then certainly I'm happy to hear that.
Ray, would you like to move to receipt of the report? And Jennifer, would you like to second it? Sure. Okay. Thank you. Amazing how much discussion we'll talk about. Please. Okay. The communications for action and receipt, we have 9.1, which is from Maxi. And it's the education meeting highlights, and it's just for information receipt. So would somebody like to move for receipt of that? Barb? Yeah. Hello, would you like a second? Thank you. All right. And I haven't received any written questions. Does anybody have any right now? Kevin, do you have something?
It was kind of mentioned last time, which was Learn Style. So I understand the Learn Style contract is not renewed, which.
Okay.
So. And they're the third party that does the technology support for students within the board. So if they're not been renewed, how's the board filling that gap to support students in that training?
Oh, that's a question. Step in, Mike.
Sorry.
But we'll- If we don't have any reports from representatives on councils and motions, we can skip to that. We have any reports? No, okay. So, yeah, we can answer Kevin's question now.
Through you, Chair, we do have an ongoing relationship with Learn Style. We also have ATRTs within our own department. This was shared again last month when you were here, but our assistive technology resource teachers that are trained to support all students with SEAC claims. And the in-house model really does lend itself to continued and cyclical service and making sure that students have access to and educators really have access to the learning resource teacher in a way that's meaningful and continued access. So the partnership with Learn Style continues on, and we're looking at partnering with them in other elements as well.
Oh, you may want to, sorry, that I was told by a principal that the Learn Style contract was cancelled, so that's a bit of a disconnect there.
Yeah, we are moving towards having our ATRTs provide the SEA claim service, but we have other relationships with Learn Style and other elements. Software elements, yeah.
Jennifer?
Learn Style is providing like 4 to 6, 8, 10 hours per student. How are ATRTs going to handle that kind of support? Every student.
So through you, Chair, I can make sure that I'm clear and connect with Bernadette Smith, who is the Superintendent of Innovation and Research who presented last week. So I can talk to her about the service delivery model and make sure I bring that back because I don't want to provide any misinformation. So if you're okay, if we add that to the Ocean log, I can certainly talk about the delivery model and the sustainability of that model. Thanks, Jennifer.
Anybody else have a question? Yes, Barb?
I have a few questions. Some of the agendas on the website are not accessible. That says error 404. I'm wondering if that's going to be fixed.
Yeah, Chair, is that from this year's SEAC agendas?
Multiple years. So I couldn't say one specific year.
Through you,
it just seems to be random that if you pick this, September 2021 and you click on the agenda, it says error 404. And then if you pick one from 2019,
it works.
It works, yeah.
Through you, Chair, I can connect with our LTSS department to see why that may be happening. I'm unaware of that, but thank you for raising it. I will connect with LTSS.
Okay. And also, can we get the IPRC dates this year for each exceptionality?
Sure. So what I can do maybe when we're presenting the exceptionalities by department next meeting, I can also look at sharing the IPRC dates.
Okay. And for last year, the year 2022, 2023, is it possible to find out how many students in grade 1, 2, and 3 were administered the NGAT, and how many grade 8 students took advantage of the Reach Ahead program, and how many students took advantage of PLAR, PLAR?
So through you, Chair, NGAT is a new contract we just signed this year. So I'm not aware that students did it last year unless it was through a pilot, but I can take those questions back and find out the answers for you. I do not have them on hand.
Okay. And I also, I don't know, maybe Jennifer would prefer to address this.
Sorry, can you repeat your grade 8? It was how many students accessed PLAR in grade 8?
No, PLAR's for high school students.
Okay, sorry, do you?
Reach Ahead is grade 8.
I'll check. Sorry, we're just making sure we documented your questions.
And how many students took advantage of FLAR? And that would be high school students. And then also regarding the action motion logs, usually when we ask a question, the response is either in that action motion log in the month that it's responded to and not moved until the following month, or there's a reference to where in the agenda that we can find the response to that question. And I noticed for Jennifer's question that was removed, there actually was never really an answer. It just said that, I think it said they were looking into it still or something like that. Jennifer, was it?
Yeah, unfortunately, I was unavailable. I mean, my understanding is it was reviewed and taken under, I don't remember the wording. Maybe you can, it was, I think in your director's report, it was commented on and closed. But yeah, I don't know where the actual closure and the answer is kept. Maybe in minutes.
Yes, I did respond. I do recall responding to it, Jennifer. Unfortunately, it was your question and you were away at the meeting, so I felt badly for that. But it was reported upon and then removed, but maybe I'd ask Council Lockyer to share, maybe we might keep those in the future to make sure they're accessible to the committee.
Sure, thank you. We can include them in the next month, the answer, and that's what I thought we were doing. And in the minutes, the answers will be reflected.
Yeah, I think that's it. There's just, it's missing closure there because there was an answer provided, but it's not obvious from the.
Yeah, so you can't figure out where the answer is. It's somewhere.
Jennifer's question.
Whereas in the past, there would be a reference that it was responded to in the June 20th agenda item number 1.5 or something like that. I can give you some examples because I brought some.
Sure, noted, thank you.
Thank you.
Lord, please, for making sure we document, thank you.
Anybody else? Jennifer, yeah, do you have a question?
Just to follow on that process, what constitutes closure on an action item? How do we decide that it's actually closed? Because to me, it's sorry.
Well, for me, I think it should be us who decides since it's our question.
Yeah, and there should be at least some kind of discussion and feedback. Because to be honest, the closure to me, the question wasn't actually addressed. It was, we are going to do something about it, is my understanding of the answer. And to me, then that is still open because nothing's actually, but maybe.
Through you, Chair, we did commit to, we did share that there is a committee that has met, and I shared the meeting dates and some of the action that was happening on the meeting dates that would have addressed the question around what you had referenced. So I can go back and find the specific details, but there is a committee that has been formed, and that committee is co-chaired by me and Candace Namath, who is the manager of Human Resources and Abilities. So she is working on that committee alongside of me. So we have been meeting regularly as a committee.
And no, I think, yeah, from now on, maybe we should like an agreement that, yeah, that particular action come off, or that item come off the action and motion log, that it's been addressed. But we don't run into it again. That may have been my.
Through Chair, so just for my clarity, typically when there's a committee, we have a motion to bring a report. The report comes back to the committee. Everyone on the committee votes to receive that, and then it's received. Is that what we mean? No, that's not what we mean.
We don't always ask for reports. We ask for a question, ask a question, and we're not able to get the answer right here at the meeting. So the question goes to somebody and comes back, and may come back at the next meeting, often not the next meeting.
So we're saying, yeah, sometimes staff need more than a month. So we're saying when it does, typically, when it comes back to committee, we can go to council operating procedure here but I think Robert's rules say when it does come, appropriate timing for staff to get the answer, it does come back to this committee, right?
Yeah, the answer does come back. That it's just SEAC is a different kind of committee. It's a little bit less, it has been historically been a little less formal. Okay, so but the addition of the action and motion log is actually a new thing. Again, historically, it's new, and it's a way for us to keep track of the questions that we've asked and whether or not we've gotten an answer that makes sense to us.
Got it. So we're just saying, oh, sorry, text. So we're just saying the answer would be posted in this file.
Yes.
Okay,
Yeah.
that makes sense.
Yeah.
Thank
And
you.
since it was Jennifer's question, and I may have agreed that it came, I'm sorry, Jennifer. So
That's
sorry.
great, as long as it was agreed, like I wasn't here, so if someone agreed that it would come off, that's fine, if that's the process, I just didn't know if that happened. And yeah, it was.
But yeah,
Answer could be included.
Yeah, we should have, yeah. You should have heard, should have been here.
I should have been here.
It would have been nice. Okay, so we are going to move on to our notices of motions and petitions. So this is where we discuss the motion and actually remote it. All right,
Then do, Chair,
yeah,
number 12, questions asked crossed by committee members.
yeah, did you have a question?
I have.
Oh, sorry, I
would like to
missed
bring
you, sorry.
something on the task.
Sorry, trustee Benjamin.
No problem. Through you, Chair, I received an email which was sent to me. It was from parents sent to the chair of the board, vice chair of the board, who then forwarded it to me. So I just would like to, and it's connected to what Bart was talking about. The subject is concerns regarding transition from CC80 to NG80 in PDSB. And I forwarded it to Superintendent Scucato because I wouldn't be able to answer this. Would you be able to talk about it, or you want me to read out the email?
No, yes, through you, I can answer the question. So the question was why we had made a decision as a board to move to the NGAT assessment, which is the Naglieri gifted assessment test. So through you, Chair, there was a review of the gifted identification process report where the NGAT was first recommended. This was presented to SEAC in April 2021 and is available in the public minutes of the board website. The implementation of the NGAT was based on extensive study and consultation. This included with SEAC, community members, organizations, and the pilot study last year, which is what I referenced with those numbers we were talking about. Before being considered for board-wide implementation, the results of last year's studies were presented at SEAC for further review and discussion. And the data from last year's study indicated that a quantitative test, with this family was asking why we removed the quantitative test, did not provide us with any unique information that the verbal test and nonverbal test did not already provide. The report of the pilot study is also available in last year's SEAC minutes for further review. So as we know, we wanted to make sure that we were really thorough in the process, and SEAC was involved all the way throughout the process. And for your reference, I have just shared, this is the document that was presented, and it's a 54-page report that shares all of the process we went through, the consultation, the reason for the review, making sure that when we were picking assessments, we were considering the minister review and making sure that we were having equity of access for all students. So I'm happy to share that with you, Trustee Benjamin, so you can share with family.
Thank you, Superintendent Scucato, but do you want me to send this to the parents, or?
It is available publicly through the website. I thought it might be easier if you either, I can share the link with you if that's a preference,
Yes,
or I just wanted you to have the information and for you to know that we went through a very comprehensive study. Thank you for your question.
Thank you.
Yes, right.
Yeah, so I was asked by Dr. Montari to share some updates about their events coming up. So my question is it do I require to share that verbally, or I could submit for inclusion in the minutes? What's the modus operandi there?
Sorry, can you repeat?
So Dr. Montari asked me to share some updates about some upcoming events.
Okay.
The SEAC. So that's,
Sorry, that typically would be in 11 then.
yeah, so
If you want to share it now, you can share it now.
do I share that verbally, or we include that with the document?
Do you have documents? If you'd like to pass, did you bring copies for everybody?
It's an email, so
It's an email. So you could forward the email to the committee, or you could present it verbally. It's up to you, whichever format you would like to.
Okay, so it's essentially up to upcoming events that they're organizing, or the Ontario is organizing, so I'll just update with these minutes.
Okay, so then you could do that verbally. Yeah.
And through you, Chair, if I may, we've made a commitment to share all SEAC kind of events. I shared this, I think, at an earlier meeting through our communications department. So I'm happy, Ray, if you send that to me and I can send that on to our communication department for community sharing.
So the first update is that Samantha is a member of the Field Autism Collaboration, where PDSP is also attending. That's an incident that happened in November 22 when field police, responded to an incident for a call for support for an autistic youth and reacted with force when he did not respond. Now, and because he's nonverbal. So now founded by Field Police is a collaboration of the service providers in Peel, attended by both Halton and Peel District School Board, where there is uptick in increase in police training. And there is a video as well with a link, which I will share with Claudine. I think we'll take it from there. So that's something that Ontario is very actively working on. And the previous rep was here, which I think many of you met, has now moved on to as member of this committee for Ontario. So that's one quick update. The other update is that there are 2 events coming up that Autism Ontario is organizing. One is coming up on December 18th. That's called Rad Dads. That's for the caregivers who are parents, male caregivers of kids with autism or similar other disabilities to simply socialize or share experiences and understand and learn from each other's experience. The other one is Awesome Moms, which is a very similar event for moms who are the female caregivers for transgender and non-binary folks, as well as kids who are on the autism spectrum and similar. That's on 21st of December. So I have this in English and French, which I will send it to you for inclusion and review. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah. Yes, Kevin.
So it was a quick question on the NGAT, which is there a process for students to request academic accommodations for those types of formalized testing?
So yes, the NGAT is very comprehensive. It allows children to be read to and things like that as well. That's in the report.
Great. So we're gonna finally get to 14.1. Oh, sorry. Barb?
Yeah, I was gonna bring this up later, but since it's being talked about right now, I do recall that during this process for the NGAT that we were told that the quantitative portion would not be administered to students. However, I have been in contact with Jack Moglieri, who is the creator of the testing, and he has said that all 3 tests should be used and that students who excel in math would be identified with the quantitative test. So if you're not administering the quantitative test, you're probably missing students who are gifted in math. I don't understand why you wouldn't want to find students who are gifted in math.
So what we have here, sorry, through you, Chair, is what we have here and what I shared with the team from the team is that the data from last year's study indicated that the quantitative test did not provide us with unique information that the verbal and nonverbal test did not already provide. So it didn't, as a subset, did not provide unique information that wasn't affirmed in one of the other verbal and nonverbal tests.
But can you be sure that there aren't students who are being missed by not administering that test, that sub-test? The tests were designed to be administered together, not for people to pick and choose which one they want to use.
So I can come back with that response.
Okay, thank you.
Anybody else? I'm looking at everybody. Okay. 14.1. And I'd just like to comment that maybe some of the disconnect that happened was the fact that the meeting before there was the question came from Kevin, and then Mary was the one that presented her own motion, and maybe Kevin had a different idea of what the motion was supposed to look like. But anyway, it's just my feedback. So 14.1, this motion. Let's discuss the motion as it is. And Mary, since it is your motion, would you, so can you, tell us what you think is missing from this?
Well, the real point of this motion, we had quite a bit of discussion in the meeting before that. Oh, sorry. Through you, Chair. Yeah, so the meeting before this was submitted, we had quite a bit of discussion at the table. Everybody was offering input, which was great. And then the suggestion was made that we take away and actually discuss amongst ourselves exactly what it was we wanted to present to the board. So we tried to do that amongst ourselves. And I ended up bringing this motion to SEAC, which I believe we all thought we were going to be discussing at the last meeting. That apparently did not happen. We're told that it was, I don't think we even received it. We received it. Yeah, we received it. No, for discussion.
So notice of motion.
It was just a notice. We didn't discuss it, we didn't receive it or anything. So I think we were kind of confused about that, because we thought we were gonna have discussion. And then I submitted, it was read, submitted a hard copy of it. And then I was just thrown aback when I saw this saying that I submitted this, which is not what I submitted. The real gist of what I was trying to ask is, not that I'm not interested in all students with special education needs or disabilities or whatever. My focus was students with intellectual disabilities. We've had hearty discussions about gifted, autism, all kinds of different things. Students with intellectual disabilities have been missing at this SEAC table over the many years. And we have a lot of students with intellectual disabilities in this board, and they are going through our school system an extra 4 years, and at the end of it, they come out with nothing. Okay, and what I mean by nothing is no preparation for either workforce, higher education, absolutely nothing. I've spoken to many families, even this last graduating school year, and the discussion is, oh, what's your child doing? What's your child doing? What's your child doing? Sitting at home. A lot of them come out of the school system and they sit at home. So my question was, really wanted to know this VOC 1 pathway that most of our students with intellectual disabilities are being herded down. I want to know what is the reasoning, how is the board justifying the pathway that they're putting our students on? Where is that leading to? There has to be some, I mean, we say that the board is an evidence-based board. Where is your evidence that putting our students down this particular pathway leads to a viable outcome? My understanding of a vocation means you should be coming out of there with, they have all kinds of different trades in those schools. Like I'm going to specifically just call out the school, West Credit. They have everything there. Many of our students go through that school. They should be coming out prepared for work, right? Like this is not daycare. Like they should be coming out with a trade, whether it's construction, whether it's esthetician, whether it's cooking, whether it's they have doggy daycare, like anything. Most of them just go, it's like a little buffet. They do a little bit of this, do a little bit of that, do a little bit of this. And when they come out, they are not prepared. We have my blueprint pathway. What is that doing for our students? Like many families were not aware that VOC 1 has no curriculum. I don't know if people know that at this table. There is no curriculum in a VOC 1 program. So what are we doing with our kids? Like these are lives. These are not products that if we don't get it right, we can just say, oh well, next time, better luck next time. These are lives. These are outcomes. And I specifically went through and gave such a long presentation, giving backstory and giving statistics on the dismal employment opportunities for individuals with intellectual, that's my specific intellectual disabilities. Because a lot of our students that have disabilities, they don't have an intellectual disability, right? So we have kids that have an intellectual disability. What is the Peel District School Board doing for those kids? That is what I want to know. When a child leaves the board, where do they go? Do they just finish all those years of school and go home and sit in front of the television? Do they walk out of school and into a day program that families can't afford? What are we doing? That's what I wanted to know. And this notice of motion number 11 does not reflect what I said. That was why I was kind of up in arms. I'm like, what? I couldn't even recognize my own motion from reading what was reworded on my behalf. Right? So that was the issue with this. So this number 11 does not reflect what I asked.
So how do we, so we're gonna need to reword this.
It has to be reworded because that's not.
And include some reference to the VOC one, intellectual disability. Intellectual disability.
That's my question.
Catherine, can you help us?
If we were to add, and further that the committee be provided with outcome data for students with intellectual disabilities to demonstrate that the system serves the best possible outcomes for said students. Is that capturing?
I'm gonna say as a parent of a child who went through the VOC one program. Yeah. He has a job because of me, not because of the VOC one program. Sorry.
Hey, Chair, I'm just trying to get a question of clarification. So I'm reading motion in the online agenda, have it as 14.1. Can we read the motion from top to bottom and then maybe we can identify what it is we need to add?
Okay.
So I'm reading.
So I'll read the motion.
Sure.
Whereas some students, for example, students with disabilities, do not have a linear pathway to post-secondary opportunities or pathways. And whereas some special education students with an OSSD have the prerequisite credits to attend diploma graduate programs, but a vast majority of those earning an OSSC, that's an Ontario certificate, do not complete their education post-secondary, and many have not gained the necessary skills for competitive employment. And whereas data made public is the grant. Sorry, I don't understand this, how this is worded.
I think there might be a comma missing, so I would read that as, and whereas data made public, comma, is the graduation rate based on the OSSD.
But not the outcomes post-secondary. Therefore, be it resolved that the administration bring a report on the pathway outcomes of students receiving a certificate of achievement, Ontario Secondary School Certificate, and an Ontario Secondary School Diploma with workplace level courses, and be it further resolved that the report include data on the direct correlation to these pathway outcomes and the programs delivered by the Peel District School Board.
That inclusive of the amendment, or are we missing, what else, are we missing anything else?
So we're missing the focus on the intellectual disability or the VOC one program.
So I'm wondering if, why don't we, Vice Chair, this is your motion, just a suggestion, if perhaps we included maybe in parentheses in addition to, so students with intellectual disabilities, and then you can list in parentheses any additional, this way we could get a fulsome capture. Would that resolve it? Vice Chair?
Where would you put that? Which line?
Through your chair, Vice Chair, if I may, I'm suggesting, so at the beginning of the motion, and I'm looking at Council Walker to confirm, but just, speaking as a group here, it says, whereas some students, for example, students with disabilities, to address Vice Chair's concerns, perhaps we say students with intellectual disabilities, parentheses, insert every, whatever other form of disability we want, any other acronym, just to make sure that this motion is accomplished, the intent and result.
Mary, I don't want to speak on your behalf, but I think you might have put disabilities to include intellectual and other disabilities that the committee represents.
So I thought so too, but just from vice chair's comments earlier, I think, Mary, you, if I can call you Mary, vice chair, you had noted, some historical context of, wanting to highlight specifically that terminology. So I think just including that terminology off the bat, intellectual disabilities, but then putting the parentheses, maybe we list the broader definition of disabilities. This way, if you will, the legalese will cover all of it. I think, Vice Chair Mary, I don't want to speak on your behalf, but I think that might get to the objective we're hoping for.
Carolyn, do you have a suggestion? As someone who wasn't here at the last meeting, Mary, can you read out what you had presented the last time so I can understand the context and what differences there were?
Can they put it on the screen so we can see it? Because I think it'll be more helpful if we can see. It's actually, we don't have.
It's in your agenda.
Yeah, the next one.
We don't get a copy of the agenda other than electronic.
Yeah. It's in the electronic one.
Well, we can't access it because we have no access to the internet here.
Yeah, I can lend you mine for now while they work on that. It's quite long.
Did you want to read up there?
Yeah.
Here, I have it.
But I'm just understanding that what's actually in here is not what Mary had written. So I want to hear what Mary is.
So at number 11 was the contention. So number 11, it says that this motion was presented by me, and then what it lists was not exactly what I had said, but further on in the agenda, it is there. But okay, I'll read it. So it says measuring student success seems like it would be a fairly straightforward endeavor. For those students who graduate with an OSSD and have the prerequisites to apply to university and college programs, it is. PDSB has a research department that can do this. So that was because we were speaking about it from before, looking for that data, which we didn't get. So that's why I put that in. But what about the students who do not have such a linear pathway to post-secondary opportunities or pathways that we typically think of for most students? What about students with disabilities who aren't able to reach the same academic achievements as their peers? Where do they go when they graduate? Because a diagnosis doesn't always present the same way. Some students are streamed into different programs with different results, but the outcomes remain the same. No one knows what they are. Before the vocational 2 program was removed and de-streaming was introduced, those students had a variety of diagnoses, and some fell within the parameters of an intellectual disability, and some did not. Some would graduate with an OSSD that gave them the prerequisite credits to attend diploma, granting college programs, and some did not. Some would enter the workforce upon graduation, and some would not. The data that was made public was the graduation rate based on the OSSD and not the outcomes that following. For students in vocational level 1, working towards an OSSC, the outcomes are even less clear. As the vast majority of those earning an OSSC do not continue their education into post-secondary and may have not gained the necessary skills for competitive employment, the question becomes, where do they go? The same thing can be said for those earning a certificate of accomplishment. Students who age out of the system in June of the year they turn 21 with less than 14 credits, typically 0, where do those students go after graduation? Here are some of the statistics that need to be shared in order to set the proper context for this situation. 96% unemployment rate for adults with an intellectual disability. So 4% of them get a job. 87% unemployment rate for adults with autism and autism diagnosis. That's according to StatsCan 2012. Average cost of a day program with 5-to-1 support in Peel region, $24,000 a year. Average cost of a day program with 1-to-1 support in Peel region is $50,000 to $70,000 a year. The average funding that a family receives is $5,000. Okay, so we can all do the math on that. When we only track the outcomes for students who graduate with an OSSD and are moving on to post-secondary education, we are clearly stating that only those students that can achieve this level are of value to prove that the education system is working properly. We create a two-tiered system that puts a high value on the outcome and a low value on another. We create a two-tiered system that puts a high value on one outcome and a low value on another. If that were not the case, we would know where every student in our system goes after graduation, not just those who go into college and university. We would have clear pathways and planning for each student using the individual pathway planner by Blueprint. We would be able to clearly and empirically state that the programs students with intellectual disabilities are being IPRC'd into actually work. Okay, that's the crux. And then it says, I hereby raise the motion that the PDSB be able to provide data for those students with intellectual disabilities to prove that the system that is currently being administered serves the best possible opportunities for arguably the most vulnerable population of students. We would like to know what are the pathway outcomes for students receiving a COA, OSSC, and then OSSD with workplace level courses and the direct correlation to the outcomes and the programs being delivered at the PDSB. If we continue to set the bar as low as we have, we will continue to see the same statistics we see above. Track outcomes and make the system innovative to support our students. What has been done clearly isn't working. If it did, we would have data to prove it. So this summarization threw me off. Yeah, good Carol.
Okay, so. Okay, thank you, Mary, for reading that. Because now I have the true context. From what because there is no limit in terms of what goes into a motion. Each of those paragraphs should be a whereas, and the last three should be it resolved. It's very clear as to what is being said. This does not match it.
Allison, thank you, Chair. Yeah, I suppose that's fair enough. I was going to say, I thought the second last paragraph of the I hereby raise, so second last paragraph, all of the acronyms were listed. They were listed in the second. I'm looking at them side by side. It was listed in second last of the motion, but I'm as a member of the committee, I'm happy to support either way it's written. Or amend if Vice Chair would like to work with Catherine offline and rewrite. I think we're all on the same page, but up to you.
I would strongly suggest that there be a meeting and that this be rewritten because this is a highly truncated version and obviously misses a lot of the information. And even though it is an appendix and it is added, I think this information is relevant to the motion. And since we are doing it, we're trying to do it in a proper way. Catherine?
Thank you for the feedback. That's great. We can absolutely remove what we had summarized and go straight word for word with Mary's. I think it's going to be a little challenging for staff to be actually able to respond to it, but happy to take the word for word, the way that it is.
Sorry, Carol.
As a couple of us on the committee have written motions, I suggest that we actually work with Mary to put that together and we send it to you.
Would that be acceptable to you, Mary?
Yeah, that would work.
Would you, Carol, are you offering to help? And
I am offering.
Hey, just, yeah. And Kevin?
I just wanted
your questions to be included because you had brought the.
Mine was in a broader context, which was data on graduation rates for students with this, with an IEP.
Okay, so,
But that piece is, I mean, it's important not to lose the context of what Mary put there, because that, without it, it really doesn't mean anything, and people aren't gonna go to appendix one with that.
no, they won't, no. So would there then, would there then be a need for two motions? Your motions, which would include,
I think it'd probably be better to have two of them, because the context for the VOC piece is really important. And then the second motion that addresses data points for IEPs.
Sorry, through you, Chair, if I may. So, through you, Chair, if I may, I did speak with my research department for today, and with respect to OSSC and COA certificates. And so that will be already included in the February graduation report, which you would have looked at from last year. So that's already being included for this upcoming February's report.
so then no need for. And?
Okay, so, I just want to say that I strongly support Mary's, motion. And that's what I want to say. I have other things that I could say, about this whole situation. My son graduated 20 years ago, so, and he has an intellectual disability. And he is employed, not full time, but he's employed, and he does volunteer work. And I think the education that he received back then was very good. But that was what, 20 years ago. So maybe we should look back at some of the things that did seem to be working then. And I do strongly support that resolution, that motion.
This is what sort of, Claudine, are you familiar with Project Search yet? Okay, so Project Search is a program based out of the States, but we're actually working with it with Dunbar and Peel, and we're going to be helping out with Grand Valley. And basically it's a program that works with students with intellectual disabilities in their last year of high school to put them through a 9-month internship and put them into high quality jobs. So we're talking dentist offices, municipalities, ORs, general hospitals, but these are high quality careers for persons with intellectual disabilities. I can put you in contact with the people that came.
Right?
Yeah. For you, I could ask Mary, should we, when we're seeing the outcome data in the motion, perhaps we may consider intellectual disability, but as we know, a lot of kids with intellectual disability will also have a dual diagnosis. So if we might consider phrasing the outcome data that we are seeking to this motion as kids having intellectual disability and kids having dual diagnosis, including intellectual disability, because that obviously will be probably an additional data point that might be considered relevant for this purpose.
Yeah, and I would like to also include like the bond one, because I know for my child, his exceptionality was communication deaf. So but he still was in this Mach 1 program. So I would, yeah. I think that's very important.
That's mentioned.
Yeah, through you, Chair. I hear what you're saying, in terms of adding other things to the motion. And I don't have any issue with obviously the answers for every exceptionality, but intellectual disabilities has been missing at the table. This is why I'm just, we need to talk about this. It's always been swept under the rug, and they are the most vulnerable of our special needs students. So I have no issue if something else is resolved through this, but I don't want the focus to be taken away from our students with intellectual disabilities, yes, and that Mach 1 program, because that, yeah, There's no curriculum. So we want to know, why are our children being herded down this pathway to nowhere?
Yeah, sorry, I was actually suggesting dual diagnosis, including intellectual disability, so that being the focus. But a lot of kids with intellectual disability will have some other diagnosis as well.
Absolutely.
So that should probably be flagged in the subcategory, if I may, something like that. That's what I was suggesting.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Did you have something?
Yeah, if I could, yeah, through you, Chair. So I'm seeing two things here, and I think, thank you, Carol, for offering to kind of craft the motion. I think what I'm hearing are pathway data and program delivery. And I think we need to, as you're crafting the motion, think about those two pieces. And I will share that pathway data. We have restrictions. I will share this, and I don't want the motion to come back and then we, as staff, come back and say, we can't provide that for you because of the restrictions that we have, even from OCAS, that doesn't allow certain information to be shared with the public. So I would just suggest, as you're crafting those, the motion that could contain program and potential pathway, that you maybe connect with Claudine, if Claudine can connect with research to just say, look, if you're going to ask this question, I won't be able to respond. So it's going to come, it's going to land, it's going to go nowhere. So I just offer that as potential solution to kind of support you as you build the motion up.
That's right. Yeah. Sorry, Dorothy.
I understand what you guys are discussing, but I think individuals with comorbidities, if you start clustering information together, you kind of lose the nuances for what Mary's trying to flush out. So it has to be separated, because you'll have different outcomes. So if I understand Mary's suggestion or motion, she's looking for specifics for precisely intellectual, exactly. And I 100% support what you're saying, because as Anne had stated, her son went through the system 20 years ago. Mine went through the system and completed 3 years ago. And I'm unsure what truly has changed, because we, in my opinion, and I don't mean to overstep, but as a parent, when you go through the system towards the end, you're wiped, because you've been up against the system for so long that towards the end, grade 12, second year of grade 12, third year of grade 12, you're emotionally wiped.
You're burned out.
Oh, 100%.
And you don't ask questions.
You don't. So it ends up being a situation of an IPRC that doesn't adequately address programming specific for your child anymore. The IPRC is there, even though you've had multiple conversations to the system, nothing has changed. It's still an IPRC from grade 11 or grade 12. And like I said, towards the end, and I'm speaking personally here, you're tired. And your child ends up being in a situation where it doesn't necessarily benefit he or she, because you've been advocating from junior kindergarten. And so, yes, your child end up being in a situation where they're on a pathway to nowhere.
And sometimes you as a parent have been trying to teach your child to advocate for themselves, and you think they are, because they tell you they are, and they tell you they're asking these questions of the guidance personnel that are meeting with them. But are the guidance personnel listening to them? Sorry.
And how many times are you really, if you're working, you're not physically there to have eyes on, right? So again, I'm hoping I'm not overstepping, but once your loved one enters into grade 12, by that point, you're done. And it ends up being a situation where the individual is in a daycare-like setting because you simply don't have it with you anymore. The bigger that you had when the little person entered into junior kindergarten,
the system is simply too big. It's a ship that moves like in micro, and like Anne said, 20 years ago, her loved one left. 3-4 years ago, because I have 2 individuals with special needs, not much have changed. And it's a stereotyping. It's the pigeonholing of what the educators believe your child should fit into this box, and to expand their thought process, to move their shift their attitude. And if you're doing that from junior kindergarten straight up to grade 12, could you imagine? And if each year that individual is in a different class, that's you reteaching. And for some of the parents for which I've supported, the parents are re-traumatized through their lived experiences, their journey, because they have to reteach. And by doing so, they're providing their background history. And like I said, a pathway to nowhere.
Thank you, Bill. You have something else?
Yeah, I just wanted to say something else, just listening to Dorothy. And I deal with a lot of families that have students with Down syndrome. That's the group that I represent. And, this conversation kind of brings me to tears because there isn't another segment of student that would come into this school system with a particular, like you test the students, right? So our kids get tested to see where they fall, okay? And many of our students come in, maybe MID, which is I call the top of the bottom of the bucket. I'm sorry to say that. And as they progress through our educational system, they get retested and they somehow are lower on their testing scores. And that does not seem to concern anybody at the Peel District School Board, that our kids are coming in and going through and ending up worse, right? Why is nobody raising the alarm? Like, that's really where I'm at. It's very disheartening, right? Nobody seems to care. It's almost like, why waste our money on these kids? They're not going to achieve anything. I'm sorry for the tears. This is very, very, very emotional. And then, it doesn't make sense. Like, what are we doing with these kids? Like, they're not kids, they're adults. What are we doing with them? Why are we not concerned? Like, I know we're not supposed to talk about our personal stuff. I'm just going to throw something in there. I have my one that has special needs, and I have another one that I probably should have got a test because she's probably gifted. But we're getting 98s in math, right? And I'm struggling to get academic content for this one with Down syndrome. And then I get a paper coming home to my home that, oh, my daughter that's getting 98 in math, we want to give her some extra math support. And I'm like, what? Like, I probably should have done it. I ripped the paper up and I threw it away. I was so upset. I'm like, these kids that are typically developing, they're going to get it. They're going to get it. We need to spend a little extra time and focus on the kids that need a little bit more support, right? We're just throwing them out with the bathwater. And this is not right, because then they become a burden to their families, to our system, like the government system. Look, the government has to support them because they have no way of earning an income, not because they can't, because nobody has bothered to invest in them, to help them to reach their potential. And that also puts a burden. Like, I have 3 older kids. Well, when I'm dead and gone, my 3 kids are going to have to now look after my child with Down syndrome because she wasted her time at the Peel District School Board. I'm so sorry, right? Like, this has to stop. This has to stop. This conversation cannot keep going on and on. Down syndrome has been here since the beginning of time. And I don't understand why we haven't figured this out yet. Whether it's a lack of concern or something. But yeah, that is my spiel. I'm going to stop now because I can go on forever, but this has to stop. And that was really what offended me with the wording when I put intellectual disabilities. And it was almost like, we don't want to address that, so we're going to change the word so we can, and if that wasn't the intent, I understand. But we need to put it out there, let people see what is happening, right? So when it's out in the open, it will get resolved. But we can't keep sweeping this under the carpet. Thank you.
Mary and I have been, a few of us have been here on this for a long time, soldiering through. And to piggyback on what Mary's saying, we got rid of the Vault 2 because it was a bridge to nowhere. Right? We have empirical data that speaks to that. It's one and the same. We're just going to call it something different. So you have individuals with DS in the Vault 2 program on a pathway to nowhere. This is exactly what she's talking about. So if Anne can speak to 20 years ago, and I can speak to 5 years ago, I'm telling you, it has to change because not much has changed. We have lived experiences. We could provide you our journey. Right? My son also has DS. He's older than Mary's daughter. It's the same thing. It's a pattern. It has to change.
Okay, so I think the conclusion is, we're not going to, be voting on accepting the, motion as it stands because it needs to be rewritten, and that Carol and Mary are gonna get together and rewrite it and bring it back. And Catherine, so you're gonna be involved in this too, so we'll. And then we'll read the motion next meeting in January, and yeah, and thank you for sharing. Is that a quick okay with you, Anne?
Yes, through you, Chair, yes, that is perfect for the rent.
Okay, the motion. This was kind of any project. So we'll move on to what's in the motion after the law.
Yeah, and through you, Chair, there was a motion raised for more information on audiological management for hard of hearing students. So I did make a formal request to our planning and facilities departments, and they did share that they have considerations for deaf and hard of hearings are taken when building or updating schools. They have a number of considerations that are taken. They included acoustical ceilings that are installed throughout all newly designed occupant spaces to improve the quality of acoustic environment. This is also done through, again, that abilities form that was shared last month for students who need it in existing buildings. PA systems are designed and have been updated to set up to ensure that they are heard by people who have hearing impairments. Emergency systems such as fire alarms and lockdowns have a combination of warning devices that both have visual strobes and audible horns. And that gym's general purpose rooms installed with acoustical roof decks. Walls are constructed with acoustical blocks or wall panels. There's assisted listening systems, and the sound systems are adhering to the Ontario Department of Education's radio education branch. And existing plant schools, again, would need to complete the accessibility form that was shared at the last SEAC meeting to make specific improvements as needed.
Thank you. Thank you for that information.
So I guess if we're going to follow process, then we need your approval to remove it from the action log. Is that what we're doing? No, we don't need to do that. It just comes on. That's what I'm at. I guess that was asking as a, sorry, Catherine, just as a.
I think the process is that answer will be actually coming back in the minutes in writing next time. And then whether to remove it.
Understood. Thank you for the clarification. Thank you for the clarification.
Can I ask, what is, in terms of deferred maintenance, what is the timeline for retrofitting older schools to meet those standards? I mean, it's great for the new ones, but what about ones we already have?
Yeah, and through you, Chair, that process was shared last meeting that you weren't at around accessibility forms that are created in combination with our occupational therapist and the manager of updates to plants. And it's a form that's done, and then they go through a committee and then determine the plants that need to be updated based on the request.
What What's the average time to address that? Like,
Oh, it depends on the size of the project. Yeah, so, you know, there are things, accessibility things like, you know, painting of the stairs that can be done almost immediately, right? For like blind, low vision students or things like that, that can be done more immediately. Obviously, if there's significant plant improvements, that takes time and budget. So I can't give you a timeline outside of knowing what specific ones you're looking
I
for.
was just for those who are hard of hearing for induction groups and technology.
So we do not currently have anything on our accessibility forms that's asking for accommodations for deaf or hard of hearing students. That's not currently. There's nothing sitting on that request.
So would that be added then?
So it's on the form.
It is on
There's
the
no
form.
request.
No request yet?
Yes.
Okay,
So
so it's on the.
It's on the form, yes.
Okay, it is
Yes.
part of, okay, good.
Or they've been completed, yeah, so
Okay.
there's no pending requests, if that makes
But
sense.
it is.
Yes, that is a
It
form
is
of
that,
accessibility.
it is
yes.
that.
Yes,
Okay,
yes, thank you.
good. I wasn't sure. Okay.
Okay, and no, of course, happy to do it. So, point 2 was Sawana Afrocentric Circle, and I think I already clarified that at the start of the meeting, that we would bring that next time.
Forwarded you the email.
Yes, so that will be reported next. The next was a request from Barb Sear that we bring back on SIS reports to SEAC. The purpose of the Ontario School Information System, which is ONSIS, that is to provide Ministry of Education with information about individual boards so that they can make evidence-informed decisions regarding policy, program, practices that will improve student achievement. The data informs both provincial and local decision-making. So as you know, the ONSIS reporting is captured on October 31st at the end of every school year. And the special education report provides a system level of accountability of students, which is captured in Ontario. I'm making a commitment to bring back that report as requested to the January meeting, as it was not shared in November after ONSIS closed. So it will bring back as a report with charts and graphs, looking at the special education.
Can you make sure we can actually read what's written on it? Because that was a problem in the past. The printing was so small, we couldn't read the numbers.
On the graphs, sorry, Mark, just to clarify on the graphs, okay, large print graphs, absolutely. And the final question came from Anne around the update for the transition facility position, which we are happy to share that the position has been posted. We had 75 applicants. We have screened down to 8 interviews, which take place at the very first week of January for a hopeful start date of February 1st.
That's great. Thank you.
Then we find out.
Wow.
Yes, thank you.
That's very great.
And Barb, did you notice that I answered the next one?
Yeah. Yes.
Okay. Number 16. Dorothy's moving her German and Trustee Clark.
Yeah.
Is seconding it. All in favor? And we adjourn.